2015 was a prominent year for SpongeBob games on Nick.com. After we had a wave of considerably large games from 2014, this year had a lot to follow up on. Not to mention, with the promotion and release of the theatrical film Sponge Out of Water, this was a big year for SpongeBob in general. Several of the 2015 games are still cherished today and have a lot to appreciate about them. So let's have a look for ourselves. Let's start with Boogie Bob Dance Pants, which is an outlier because it was made by Indigo Entertainment. Up until now, they had only made holiday games. On top of that, they hadn't made any SpongeBob games since 2011. This was a surprising, but welcome return. They came back with some very bouncy music. And we have cutscenes.
What's going on?
A talent show with your host, me.
Please, Squidward, let me be in the show.
So you really want to be in the show?
Oh, yes.
Okay, I can hardly wait.
Glad we resolved that quickly enough. So SpongeBob performs a series of exuberant dance moves while a Krabby Patty flies around a circle. You click when it reaches a colored region to keep him going. If you miss, you fail, so it's all about seeing how far you can go. But if you get a good streak going, the whole game goes wild. Your surrounding crowd also gets bigger. This can be a really good time, but it does sting a little when you lose a good streak. Not bad though. Now here's a difficult one. Land Ho is a very interesting game based on the episode Pressure. You start out as SpongeBob and control him on one of two screens. On top, he's a realistic sponge on dry land. On the bottom, he's his usual self underwater. You run across each screen and jump over obstacles, which shifts you to the other screen. Your goal is to collect sandwiches, but it's way easier said than done. Even if you think you've timed something perfectly, jumping over these obstacles can be a real challenge. As such, you don't get very many Krabby Patties during each run, but you need a total of 80 to unlock Patrick and 200 to unlock Sandy. That is a lot, considering how few you can normally get. They want you to be playing this for hours. It's pretty neat, but really difficult. But while we're on the topic of realistic SpongeBob characters being out of water, let's take a look at a really beloved classic. This is Live from Bikini Bottom. It's styled like a sort of puppet show where you mess around with SpongeBob, Patrick, Squidward, and Mr. Krabs, who are all realistic. This was made by Workin' Man and was certainly one of their most fascinating creations. You can fling these characters around the island, or you can check a list of things you can do to try and shake things up. Items will fly into the island every so often, so you can mess around with them and see what they do. You can also be attacked by seagulls. That's always nice. I just like throwing everyone around, especially when you switch to nighttime and disrupt their sleep with it. And I like tilting the island and seeing who can stay on the longest. It's also fun to see the animations when you give a different character an item. Patrick will eat most of them, while Mr. Krabs will pocket them for money. Also, remember when we reviewed Lights, Camera, Pants on PC? Remember how I mentioned that the game confused the magic conch shell with the conch signal from Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy 2? Well, in one of the animations, this game does too.
Evil!
And yeah, the voice clips are hilarious.
That guy got hit in the head with a coconut!
And once you've completed your checklist, you get a golden Krabby Patty. Now this is great, and you can have some endless fun with it, but we aren't finished with it just yet. There was also a Halloween edition that added so much more. First of all, when the seagulls come to attack, Sandy enters with a karate glove. Now you can mess around with her too. But at night, she becomes the were-squirrel and chases everyone around. You might remember the were-squirrel from a minigame in Workin' Man's Legends of Bikini Bottom. I always appreciated Workin' Man's commitment to continuity. You can also see the Flying Dutchman at night, and since it's listed as a task, you might assume it's a lot more entertaining than it is. But nah, it's really underwhelming. But anyway, this is great. Easily one of my favorite games on Nick.com. So it's easy to see Nickelodeon was making a lot of realistic themed SpongeBob games to hype up Sponge Out of Water. But what about the games actually based on the movie? There were quite a few, but unfortunately, a lot of them are inaccessible today. Let's start with The Fallen. Patrick's Ice Cream Mix-Up was a simple tile matching game with ice cream and spoons. Fair enough. In SpongeBob's Pirate Pursuit, you controlled SpongeBob, Patrick, Squidward, Mr. Krabs, Sandy, and Plankton as you flew through an obstacle-filled street and chased Burgerbeard's ship. You also appeared to use character-specific moves to fight him. According to game developer Kevin Wind, this was made by CYCL, Ham, and FRWD. Cycle and forward. And Ham. But one that does work is Defend the Krusty Krab. It was made by Division 13, creators of numerous Ninjago games, among other ones. Plankton is bombing the Krusty Krab with tanks and planes that look like him, so you shoot back with different condiment weapons, just like the scene from the movie that took up 98% of all advertisements. You catch falling burgers and rack up currency over time, which you can use for more weapons. The game's okay, nothing too big, but one game that's especially large is Bikini Bottom Defenders. Like with Pirate Pursuit, you control the main cast of the movie and have to fight on a beach. Obstacles are flying at you, so you have to use each character's designated power to deflect them. And like with Land Ho, look at how much you need to play to unlock all these other characters. Nickelodeon was really telling kids to forget about school and homework for these games. But by hitting different numbers on your keyboard, you could use different abilities and summon different characters to use their own. Certain obstacles required certain abilities to deal with them. It's a lot to remember and seems really complicated, but it's actually really easy. The game is strikingly forgiving and easy to get a grasp on, though the screen can get really messy. Just look at this. It's hard to keep track of what's going on. A little complicated, but not bad. The last game made to advertise the movie was Save the Krabby Patty. It looks considerably different from the other ones, but let's see what we're in for.
Here we go! Don't touch that!
Oops, sorry about that. But you send SpongeBob upwards by controlling a giant fan. You have to avoid stuff. Not too hard to understand. It's alright. But now let's get on to another big game that wasn't related to the movie. When we looked at the SquarePants mysteries, we checked out a much smaller game called Bikini Bottom Mysteries Search. It was like a SpongeBob version of Where's Waldo. Well, this seemed to be a much more detailed version of that. This was the Ultimate Bikini Bottom Buddy Search. Now this came out in 2015, but it wouldn't be until 2016 that a massive event would be held for it on YTV. 2-hour SpongeBob marathons would run every day for the first 5 days in February. The advertisement on YTV called it brand new, which was obviously a lie at the time, but hey, maybe it was new in Canada. But the game is far more involved than you'd expect from a Where's Waldo type of game. The first round is simple. You move around, find someone, and click on them. But then it gets more interesting. The second round is actually easier because the people you're looking for fidget around. But the third is harder because it's in total darkness and you need to feed an anglerfish to light the way. Then you have to use x-ray glasses to see who ate Krabby Patties. It's a lot of people to scroll through. But the last level is so much easier. You use a submarine's radar to find everyone. Then you win. Every stage also has a challenge mode, which is slightly more difficult. The first stage is timed, the second only allows 5 misses, and the other 3 only allow you to use your advantage 15 times. So yeah, the game is really interesting. It can be a bit frustrating if a stage takes too long, but the idea is pretty cool. Not a bad way to kill some time. And if you beat the game, you could download the background image and a sticker sheet with the characters on it, so it's always nice to have real life rewards. But let's look at another considerably large game that came out this year. October saw the release of an episode called Sanctuary, but a game inspired by the episode actually came out before it. This was Snail Care, a game where you'd design your own snail and take care of it. You'd crack an egg open and choose a name for the creature inside it. You could only choose from a list of pre-selected words, but you could make some interesting combinations. Then once you're in, you can play with your snail, feed it, or bathe it. It has different wants that you can satisfy, and the games are pretty fun to check out. You can throw a ball of yarn around, make it chase a laser pointer, or just feed it cake. Other snails come to hang out too. It's a real party. And there's Patrick in his underwear on the TV. What the heck are you watching, SpongeBob? Wait, did it just eat the flour? And as you can see, the snail gets very dirty as the day goes on, but you can wash it in the bath. It's much more willing to bathe than Gary ever was. But what I like to do is customize the snail and make it look as clunky and uncomfortable as I possibly can. Now that's a goofy looking critter. Alright, time for bed. So as you can see, you can have a lot of fun with this. I recommend giving it a try. There's a lot you can do, and it's a really good time. a great addition to Nickelodeon's website. But this year had another game that was based on an episode, but one that came out a few years before it. This was The Great Patty Caper 2, obviously a sequel to The Great Patty Caper, though the title might confuse people and make them think there's another game they missed. This doesn't really have anything to do with the episode, but it does keep the vibe of an old-time train heist. Maybe it's the sequel to Mystery Train. Basically, Plankton's robots are riding seahorses to hijack a train SpongeBob is conducting. Patrick, Mr. Krabs, Squidward, and Sandy throw condiments to stop them. Each condiment is strong against a certain type of enemy, so you can play into that with your battle strategy. You can even upgrade characters at the end of each stage, building their power, special ability, or reducing their cooldown time. There are also lightning rounds where everyone goes super fast. It's pretty neat. Not a bad game. But now we're nearing the end of the year. These last 4 games are a lot less complicated than some of these other installments, but they're worth checking out in their own rights. First of all, Belly Bounce, the This Is Pop game from 2009, received an update this year. It's a little more detailed, but still the same premise. Patrick bounces SpongeBob on his belly while he collects Krabby Patties and avoids jellyfish. Not too much here. But what we really need to talk about are the Bikini Bottom board games. They came out in December, and many would consider them highlights of the year. First, let's look at Bikini Bottom Tic-Tac-Toe. All of these games could be played with either 1 or 2 players. Then you choose a character between SpongeBob, Patrick, Squidward, Sandy, Mr. Krabs, or Plankton. Then you shoot jellyfish from a jar and play tic-tac-toe with them. That's about it. But the animation is really smooth and the effects are fun to watch. We also get quotes from the show.
I just want to talk.
Now let's look at Bikini Bottom Checkers. It's the same deal, but all the checkers have SpongeBob and Patrick on them. Unfortunately, you can't click a button to annoy your opponent in this one. It's fun to watch the checkers get smashed whenever they're defeated though. Multiplayer mode also gives you a sideways view of the board, which the chess game also does. And once you win, you get a code for the game Power Packed. Now there's one we have to check out in a future video. But lastly, let's close this out with the third and most complicated one of the trio, Bikini Bottom Chess. Now this one is great because each character has different cast members for each piece. For SpongeBob and Patrick, Neptune and Amphitrite are the king and queen, Squidward is the bishop, Mystery is the knight, SpongeBob's house is the rook, and Jellyfish are the pawns, though Patrick's pieces look goofier. With Mermaid Man, him and Barnacle Boy are the king and queen, Old Man Walker is the bishop, Larry Luciano is the knight, and Shady Shoals is the rook. With Larry, Sandy's his queen, while his fellow tough guys and lifeguard towers make up his team. The Flying Dutchman has a ghostly crew and his queen is Madam Hagfish. And obviously Karen is Plankton's queen. And what's unique is that this game has a primary mode where you work through each of these opponents to reach the end. Like with the others, the animations are fun to watch, and it's nice to see such a detailed adaptation of chess. All 3 of these games are really good and worth checking out for yourselves. A pretty fine way to end a great year of SpongeBob gaming. Like with 2014 before it, 2015 had a ton of noteworthy releases that continued to build the legacy of Nick.com. Even with the end of SpongeBob's Flash game era inching closer by the day, we were still able to enjoy these great releases while anticipating the projects that would follow them. This year gave us a lot, and 2016 would continue to keep the train moving. Be sure to check it out when we look at those games as well. But for now, be sure to subscribe, follow me on the accounts in the description below, and tune in to our next installment. Thank you for joining me. I will see you in the next memory.